Hi everyone, this is the lecture to accompany Chapter 9 in your textbook. Please read Chapter 9, there's lots of information I don't have time to address. Okay, let's talk about forming and maintaining personal relationships. Why do relationships matter? Well, I think we've been looking at that question since the beginning of the semester. We need personal relationships. We need to belong, to feel closeness and intimacy with other people in order to survive and thrive in the world. Humans are social creatures. Even if you think of yourself as a loner, and you actually might be okay with less social interaction than someone else, you cannot avoid it completely and stay healthy and, frankly, sane. Roy Baumeister's need to belong theory states that we are driven to seek, form, maintain, and protect long-term relationships with our family, with our everyday interactions, at school, at work, with our intimate partners, and even online. We use interpersonal communication as a tool to form and maintain these relationships. But relationships don't just fulfill our need to belong. There are also lots of rewards that come with these relationships. We get emotional rewards. We get emotional support and encouragement. We get happiness and fun out of interacting with those closest to us. We get material rewards. We tend to share our resources with those to whom we feel closest, and they do the same for us. Spouses and friends often routinely share money, food, transportation, lodging, and other material needs. And we get health rewards. Once again, good relationships tend to keep us healthy and help us deal with stress. But more than that, when we have a network of close friends and relatives, we all look out for each other's safety and well-being. However, like anything worthwhile, our social relationships carry costs as well as benefits. We do need to invest time into maintaining our relationships. You need to also make an emotional investment in another person. Often, spending money is a part of the cost of a relationship, and definitely physical investments, including things like helping a friend move or going running with them. The vast majority of the time, we willingly pay these costs, because friendships, romances, and family closeness are well worth what we invest in them. There are some characteristics that define personal relationships. The first one is that close personal relationships require commitment, which is basically our desire to stay in that relationship no matter what happens. Most close relationships will experience some stresses and problems, but if the people in that relationship are committed to it, chances of learning, growing, and overcoming problems are much greater. Emotional commitment means that we care about the other person's emotional well-being. Social commitment means that we'll spend time not just with that person, but with other people in that person's social and family circle. And particularly with family members, we may have legal or financial commitments to them, meaning we provide certain things for our children, spouse, and maybe even our parents, depending on the circumstances. Another characteristic of personal relationships is that they foster interdependence, which means that each person's behaviors affect the other person in the relationship. Generally speaking, when you decide to do something, you take other people's needs and desires into account. Obviously, interdependence is higher in intimate and family relationships than it is in friendships, but it's still a factor in close friendships. You influence other people as much as they influence you. And, as stated before, personal relationships require continual investment, the commitment of all the resources like time, emotional energy, and financial commitment on an ongoing basis. It's interesting, though, that the vast majority of us are aware of how much we have invested in a particular relationship, and people report being most happy with a relationship if they perceive that the other person is investing a similar amount of resources into it. Trouble may occur if someone thinks that the other person is not as committed to the relationship as they are. Dialectical tensions within relationships are very common and normal. Humans often want two very different things at the same time. Dialectical tensions are the conflicts between two important but opposing needs. In personal relationships, these particular dialectical tensions often arise. Autonomy versus connection. We want to be our own person, responsible for ourselves. However, We also need to feel connected to someone else. Openness versus closedness. We may feel like we need some privacy, like we don't want to share every single thought we have with someone. Nevertheless, we need to be open and honest with the people that we care most about. And predictability versus novelty. Most humans like the sense of security that being with one person brings, yet we still want to have different experiences. Understanding that dialectical tensions exist, are normal, and can often be worked through is essential to maintaining relationships. There are 8 strategies for managing dialectical tensions. None of these is perfect for all situations, but each might work in different circumstances and with different people. Denial means you sublimate or ignore the conflict and focus on the needs of the other person. Disorientation means stopping the tension entirely by cutting off the relationship. That seems a little harsh, but in certain circumstances that might be the thing to do. Alternation means going back and forth between the two sides of the conflict. Segmentation means dealing with certain aspects of both sides of the conflict. Balance means trying to find a middle ground between both sides. Integration means trying to develop behaviors that will satisfy both sides of the conflict. Recalibration means reframing attention so that the two sides are labeled as complementary rather than oppositional. And reaffirmation means simply embracing dialectical tensions as a totally normal part of life. The book gives excellent examples of each of these strategies. Let's turn our attention to how and why we choose particular people to be our friends and significant others. There are several different theories out there, and each one does a pretty good job at narrowing down why we pick certain people over others and how we maintain those relationships. Attraction theory states that we're drawn to particular people for 3 basic reasons: physical attraction, social attraction, and task attraction. Physical attraction does not mean sexual attraction. Obviously, sexual attraction and physical attraction go hand in hand, but this isn't referring to the sexual part. Humans are visually oriented, and while we do understand that attractiveness is not necessarily an indicator of a person's other qualities, we really do pay close attention to physical appearance when we're forming relationships, even with our friends to whom we're not sexually attracted. There's just something about the way that person looks that we like and are drawn to. You may also be attracted to another person because of their personality. If they're fun with a great sense of humor, you might find that attractive, or if they're quiet and introspective, you might find that attractive as well. Task attraction has to do with finding someone's abilities, talents, and dependability attractive. We like people who do things well, who have qualities we associate with success. As I said before, appearance is important when we're choosing our friends and significant others. What people find compelling varies by culture as well as individually. What I find interesting and compelling in someone's appearance is maybe not what you would find attractive. We're also attracted by proximity. In other words, we're more likely to make friends or find intimate partners among the people with whom we interact frequently. That's why we often find our friends and lovers at work, at church, or in a place where people of our own cultures and co-cultures congregate. And that includes not only face-to-face interactions, but online interactions as well. You probably have at least one friend you met through social media or through online gaming or something similar. We're also attracted to people we find similar to ourselves, people with similar cultures, backgrounds, experiences, likes and dislikes. When we meet people with whom we have much in common, we tend to be naturally drawn to them. However, we can also be attracted by complementarity, which is the whole opposites attract phenomenon. However, if someone is too different, or if we see those differences as negatives rather than positives, then we are unlikely to find that person attractive. We are drawn to people unlike ourselves only if we see their qualities as positive and as something we lack in ourselves but would like to have. Uncertainty reduction theory says that we get to know others because we don't like to be uncertain about them. When we meet people, we may subconsciously think things like, can I trust them? Are they nice? Will they like me? Our natural inclination is to find out more about them to try to reduce our level of uncertainty. According to this theory, the more we know about someone, the more likely it is that we will like them. This isn't always the case, obviously. Sometimes the more you find out about someone, the less you like them. Then there's the predicted outcome value theory, which suggests that when we meet and first interact with someone, we naturally attempt to predict whether it would be in our best interest to continue communicating with them. If we like what we see and hear in early interactions, it's more likely we'll continue those interactions. We do this by using what are called approach behaviors, which are verbal and nonverbal signals that we're open to further interaction with that person. However, if early interactions with that person don't go very well, then we often instinctively use avoidance behaviors like lack of eye contact, avoiding spending time with them, and so forth. Social exchange theory says that we tend to seek relationships in which benefits outweigh costs. Remember, there are both costs and benefits to any relationship, but if we feel as if the costs are outweighing the benefits, we may consider backing away from or even ending a relationship. We should, of course, have realistic expectations of what we want and think we deserve from any relationship, and we often compare this relationship to our alternatives. Are there better people to have friendships or romances with out there? Are we okay with this particular level of costs and benefits? No relationship is perfect, and while ending one might solve some problems, it might also come at a cost that you didn't expect, like feeling guilty or lonely, or realizing that that person probably wasn't so bad after all. Or it might be the best thing you could do. You are really the only person who can decide that. Equity theory says that we look for equity, in which our ratio of costs to benefits is equal to the other person's. Relationships where one person continually gets more out of the relationship than the other person, meaning one person is over-benefited and the other is under-benefited, can lead to dissatisfaction in that relationship. In a good working relationship, it doesn't have to be exactly equal all the time, but overall the ratio of cost to benefits for each person should be at least somewhat similar. There are several behaviors that people in good solid relationships practice. We refer to these as relational maintenance behaviors. They are, first, positivity. We are generally friendly, cheerful, and courteous to our friends and intimate partners. That doesn't mean we can't occasionally have a bad day, but positivity needs to far outweigh negativity if we want to have good relationships. Second is openness. You're willing to communicate with your friend or partner to let them know your thoughts and feelings and to ask about their thoughts and feelings. Does this mean you have to be so open that you have absolutely no privacy? No, but you should be willing to open yourself up to that person and be curious and interested in them as well. Third, assurances. These are verbal and nonverbal behaviors that let the other person know that you are committed to the relationship. Social networks have to do with each person in the relationship sharing their networks of friends and family with that other person. This kind of convergence is a good way to keep relationships stable and can help you gain new friends as well. Finally, sharing tasks. This can be anything related to the relationship, whether it's two roommates sharing chores or a friend picking up tickets for a play while the other one cooks dinner. These are part of the costs of friendship, and sharing them makes the bond stronger. Most relationships come together in stages. According to communication scholar Mark Knapp, they tend to follow this 5-step process, although not always in the same way or at the same time. The first step is initiating, where you first meet and interact with this person. If you find them interesting enough to continue the process, the next stage is experimenting, in which you learn more about that person and decide whether you have enough in common to continue. The third stage is intensifying, in which you move from being acquaintances to early-stage friends, sharing more information about each other and expressing more commitment to the relationship. The fourth stage is integrating, where you share a strong sense that this relationship has its own identity, and when people see you, they think of you as close friends or a romantic couple. And finally, bonding is the stage in which you publicly announce that friendship or commitment. Knapp also theorized about the way relationships end. Some relationships never end, of course, but others do for many reasons. Here are the steps they generally go through. First, differentiating. While people in solid, stable relationships see that they have differences with the people they care about, when differences become undesirable or truly annoying, this can lead to the second step, circumscribing, in which the people in the relationship spend less time with each other, mostly to avoid dealing with areas of conflict. If circumscribing continues to the point where people are spending little time with each other, the relationship enters the stagnating stage. In this stage, partners barely speak, only communicating when absolutely necessary. This can actually go on for long periods of time. At some point, they will enter the avoiding stage, where they go to great lengths to avoid being together or speaking to each other. And finally, the terminating stage, where the relationship is officially judged to be over, not just by the participants, but by everyone. At any point up until the final stage, it's possible to save this relationship. But the longer it continues and the further it goes, the more difficult it is and the more effort both parties have to put into it to save it. Loss of friendship, breaking up and divorcing are the usual consequences of this 5-stage process. This can be painful, but if things like abuse or neglect have been part of the relationship, it can also be a relief. Not all relationships begin and end at the same pace. It's totally individual. And for lesbian and gay relationships, studies have found that they experience the stages of relationship development somewhat differently than heterosexual couples if they have to contend with discrimination, either from their families or their culture. Culture can also be a factor in relationship development. Things like arranged marriages and polygamy definitely affect both stages. Because so much of our interpersonal interactions take place online now, it's important to look at its influence. When it comes to uncertainty reduction theory, we may be more uncertain about our interactions with people we only know online. The internet makes it easy for people to hide who they really are, so many people use different strategies to determine how trustworthy and real these people are before committing to a friendship or relationship with them. We also use different strategies to maintain relationships. Openness can lead to mutual self-disclosure, which is a good thing generally. However, you need to keep in mind that it's easier to disclose too much information about yourself online than it is in face-to-face settings. There's just something about sitting in front of that laptop or staring at that iPhone screen that lends itself to you blurting out more information about yourself than might be necessary at a given point in a relationship. Positivity is also a big plus in maintaining relationships online. Think about the person who only posts negative stuff. How much do you really want to interact with that person? And finally, we tend to use different strategies for managing dialectical tensions online, particularly the openness versus closedness tension. It can be difficult to decide if you want to post something on Facebook or keep it to yourself to maintain your privacy. Some people use the denial method and don't post certain types of statuses like their relationship status on Facebook. Others use segmentation and alternation and discuss with their significant other what kinds of things might be okay to post and what might not, and get the okay from that other person before they post anything. And then there are always people who recalibrate, saying that openness on Facebook is simply the way life is, and don't see these posts about relationship status as problematic at all. Okay, you've got a good overview of this chapter. Now it's time to go to the Learn Smart assignment.